Hi everyone, so this is going to be part 2 of my storytime ASMR whisper softly spoken video series. So in this video I'm going to pick up where I left off, and that's around 1994. So this video is going to be the video that has a normal candle and not a crackle candle, but I do have a crackle candle version if you are interested in that too. So first I'm going to light the candle and get that burning, and I've popped it in the background so it just provides a nice ambient glow that hopefully you can enjoy. But for this version you won't hear the crackle sounds because the candle doesn't make any. So let's light the candle and then we can get into the story time. So in the first part of my storytime series we ended in around 1993, 1994, and it was at that time where my family and I had just moved back from overseas, and we had been living in a hotel or motel whilst trying to find a house, and we ended up finding a house and we moved in. That was 94. But around the same time we had also booked a holiday to America, and that would be the first time that we had gone to Disneyland. So that was a pretty big thing. At the time I was 9 years old and my brother was 6, and it was the first time we'd ever been to Disneyland, so we were very excited. I remember on the plane ride, it was a very long plane ride, which it still is today, but for children it's really difficult obviously. But I remember walking around a lot and I couldn't sleep, at least at that time. The plane seemed so big, and I would walk up and down, my dad would walk with me, and I remember being at the back of the plane. I don't know if it was a special section, but I remember the flight attendants were really nice and really lovely to me. They made me a cup of tea, so even at that young age I enjoyed tea, in moderation of course. But I remember having a cup of tea and looking out this big window at the back of the plane and looking out at the sky. It probably wasn't that big, but it was bigger than the windows that we had at our seats. I just remember looking out. I did eventually end up falling asleep. When I did fall asleep though, my brother was awake, and the captains actually came down and asked if he wanted to visit the cockpit at the front of the plane, so I missed out because I was sleeping, but that was okay. So my brother got to fly the plane, and he remembers that, and that was a big thing for him. We got to America, California, LA, and the hotel that we stayed at, I think it's still there now. It's in the shape of a U. It's across the road and up from Disneyland. There's a restaurant sort of downstairs in the middle or towards the front, like a diner type restaurant. But I remember being on the balcony because my brother was asleep, and again I couldn't sleep, but my dad had the video camera and was on the balcony just talking and talking and talking. When I was younger, I wouldn't shut up. So there's a video that they have of me just talking about random things. One of the things that I was completely surprised by and excited by was the fact that McDonald's did delivery, because in Australia it was very uncommon for fast food or takeaway places to do delivery, and the fact that McDonald's did delivery was fascinating to me. So I probably spoke about that for goodness knows how long. Eventually I did go to sleep though. I do remember we went to Disneyland and I had an autograph book, and one of the days we were there it was cold and rainy, which makes me think it was early of 94. I don't think it was the end of 94, but it may have been. It would have been during our summer holidays, which would have been winter. I remember wearing denim jackets with iron-on patches that my mum made, and parachute pants. So one of the days we were there, it was wet and there wasn't that many people around, but all of the characters were undercover, so we got to meet everybody, get photos, and I got my autographs. I still remember some of the rides. Some of them are still there, at least the last time I went they were there and hadn't changed a lot. Others had changed quite a bit, but I remember when we went there we only just missed out on a new section that had been opening. I think it was like Toontown or something like that, or something cartoon related. But we went on the Star Wars ride and we really liked that. And so we also did the Michael Jackson ride, and the last time that I went to Disneyland that was still there and it hadn't changed, but I remember that was the one where you wore 3D glasses. My brother and I were reaching out to try to get the things that would fly around. But yeah, the Star Wars ride was there and that was our favourite. I also remember there was a submarine ride and Splash Mountain, I think it was called, the log water ride. There was also I remember lining up. I don't know if it was the same day, but we were lining up for the Small World ride, or they played It's a Small World, and we were waiting for such a long time, and we got onto the ride and it was just boring. But it was annoying because they played the same song over and over again, and it was so bad. But it's something that we laugh about now. So I think we went to Universal Studios as well, and that has changed a lot, but we still did the tram ride. There was Jaws and the Bates Motel, the Psycho House, the Clock Tower, a few others like that. They also had, I think it was called Backdraft, like a fire show, and the water show, like Water World, like it could have been a Mad Max kind of a thing. There was Simpsons related stuff, but I can't remember too much else from Universal Studios. But I've been back since then and it's changed a lot. But I mainly remember Disneyland and not so much Universal Studios. But yeah, I also remember we went on like a Hollywood tour, so we did the handprints and looked for the stars on the street, and I remember we got a churros. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but from the main strip in Hollywood, and that was really good. I think in the same holiday we ended up going to Hawaii as well as a family and renting a convertible Mustang. I remember going to the doll plantation, or like the doll warehouse or factory, and it's different to how I remember. I did go there like in the last time we went to Hawaii, and it's very different to how I remember it, but there was a big warehouse there, but I remember being in an area where they were serving food, and I'm pretty sure my brother kicked the pineapple the person dressed up as children do, I guess. But there's not too much else that I remember from there, but I guess back to school. I had started primary school. I started in year 4, and it was the first time that I knew I really wasn't going to be moving soon. Well, at least if we were moving, it wasn't going to be to a different country or a different state. We did end up moving house, but I stayed at the same school. So I was in year 4. I still remember some of the class. I remember making what are they called, like the rice bubble treat things, and chocolate crackles, like with Cocoa Pops. I was 9, turning 10. That's year 4. We would play marbles, so with the big marbles and the mini ones and the middle size, the normal size marbles, we'd play for keeps. We played handball, so where you'd mark out the 4 squares, that was always fun. I played soccer and football, so like rugby league, netball, give or take, but yeah. 94, what else? I remember we had like a gold panning experience at the school where we were learning about the gold rush and the history about that, and that was really fun. We did dancing, and I got to wear a flowy skirt. We dressed up and went gold panning. I used to like making the dioramas in the cardboard boxes. That was something that I enjoyed. I think towards the end of primary school, Tarzos, I think they were called. They may have also been called Pogs. I'm not sure if I'm remembering that correctly, but they got banned pretty soon after because kids were trading them at school and was causing fights. There was year 5, so 95. That's when I started to get more into choir and singing, and I've always really enjoyed music. I think my whole family has been so musically minded, if you could say it that way, but yeah, I've always enjoyed it, and we'd learn some songs in choir. Some of the songs we'd learn were a bit weird, but one of the teachers, they made us learn for just normal class, like A Horse with No Name, songs like that. Other songs we'd learn would be like Feeling Groovy, Another Opening Another Show, Those Magnificent Men in Their Flying Machines, something about on a bicycle bill for two. Daisy, or whatever it's called. La Bamba. And we'd learn a lot of songs like that. I think we also went on camp. So in year 5 and year 6, one year we went to Narrabeen Sports Camp. Another year we went to Canberra. So I can't remember which was which. But yeah, that's sort of primary school. I was doing swimming and dancing. The dancing that I did, it's hard to explain, and if you did it you'd understand, but it's called physical culture. Sort of a mix between like jazz, dancing, gymnastics in a way, and aerobics, I guess. It's very difficult to explain, but I did that from 94 to 2002. I'd done it earlier, but I didn't do it overseas, so I'm not sure if it's just an Australian thing. But I was doing that as well, and swimming, which I enjoyed. So we'd do swimming carnivals, sports carnivals, and I hated jumping. I hated hurdles. I hated high jump. Long jump I wasn't too bad, but I wasn't a jumper. I'm more of a water person. I'd hate running. I hate jumping. So it'd make you do hurdles. I just kind of push them over and walk over them because I don't like jumping. And discus and shot put and javelin I enjoyed. And being swimming, I had very broad shoulders and really strong legs and arms. So I was good at discus and shot put and javelin. So that was fun. Swimming carnivals were also interesting, but I got more serious in more high school with swimming. What else? So it was year 6, and that was 96. That's the last year of primary school in New South Wales anyway. I know other states operate a little bit differently, but generally you'll finish primary school and you're 11. You may be turning 12 at the end of the year or the beginning of the year after. But with school in Australia, it operates a little differently. So you have 4 terms of school, and the first term is generally between January and April, roughly. The term 2 is April to July, then July to September, October, and then September or October to December. You have your biggest holiday between December and January. It's generally 4 or 5 weeks. And then between each of the other terms you get about 2 weeks holidays. So I know it's a little bit different. We don't get a really, really long break. But we get 3 short breaks and then a longer break over summer. Because summer is December to February here in Australia. So that's when we get our big holiday, but I don't think it's quite as long. And so that's how school operates. It's the same for high school as well as primary school here in Australia. So that was year 6. I was a vice captain, so it didn't really mean too much in primary school. But you'd have to set up the flag and the microphone and things like that for assembly. In year 6 we also had an end of year presentation, and we did the Beatles, so we learnt a lot of the Beatles music, and each year would put on a show, and I ended up having a solo where I sang Yesterday was the song, And then I started high school, so 1997, I was 12, I started high school. I went to a public school, and I had tried out for some selective high schools, and I could have gone to selective, but I chose to go to the public school because I didn't want to be away from my friends. Whether or not that was a good decision, it was what it was. So it was different going from the biggest kid in the school to the smallest. It was the first time I'd been to the school where it was like multi-level, which isn't, well, at least back then, wasn't very common for primary schools to be that big. But high school, the way that it operates in New South Wales at least, is it's year 7 to 12, and generally in year 7 you are on average about 12 years old, and by the time you're in year 12 you're about 17, roughly, for most of the year. Some people are a little bit older, some people are a little bit younger, depends on when you were born and what time of the year. Most people will have their birthdays towards the end of the year or early the year after. So in year 7 I turned 13 at the end of year 7. Some people would turn 13 at the beginning of year 8, generally. So 1997 was year 7, and I started high school, and it was different because my school would separate us by surnames. So I was in a class with a lot of people I didn't know. I'd made some new friends, and as you do, you kind of form groups. And high school really wasn't very cliquey as such, and pretty much for the most part a lot of people got along pretty well. I'd always been fairly stubborn, plus I would stick up for myself, so if anybody tried anything I'd shut them down quite fast. I just didn't put up with anything like that. So it wasn't too bad, it was alright. We were kind of a neutral in-between group for most of high school anyway. We got along with everybody for the most part. Year 7, you kind of did a bit of everything. You did all the classes, so whatever was on offer, music or science and math and English, PE. So geography, what was it, society and culture, and some other ones as well, but I know we did school sports, mainly year 7 to 9, sometimes year 10. The school sports that I did in high school was Newcomb ball, so it's kind of like volleyball a little bit. I did table tennis. I can't remember what else. There was something else that I think I did as well. I don't think it was netball. I know I did soccer, but I think that's primary school. But yeah, so table tennis, Newcomb ball, and I know I did water polo, but that was later on, so I think that was year 9, roughly. And that's a tough sport. That takes a lot. When we did water polo, it was in a diving pool, so it was really, really deep. You could not touch the bottom. So I was okay at it though, because I was doing competitive swimming, and so squad training. We still had carnivals, like sports carnivals and swimming carnivals, and so I'd make it to regional for swimming. We also did swim school, so the first year I completed the highest grade, and that means the next year onwards I could be a teacher for younger grades. even though I was only in year 8, I did my life-saving degree, like my life-saving award as part of that. I remember as part of that, you had to wear a full set of clothes, so shoes, socks, tracksuit pants, a t-shirt and a jumper, and every lap of the pool you'd take off a piece of clothing and in the water, and you couldn't touch the ground. That was tough, but I remember doing that and getting my Lifesavers Award. So I could have been a lifesaver if I wanted to. We did CPR and stuff like that as well. It's changed since then, but that's what we did back then. 98 I was in year 8. Not a lot had changed. From year 7, still same group of friends. We sort of learnt the layout of the school, and the classes did change, but they didn't change significantly until the next year, when you would split up and do different classes. And then in year 11 and 12, which is sort of the equivalent of the senior years, which if you had a job or if you were going to TAFE or something, you didn't have to complete, but I did, because I was planning on going to university, and to get into university, at least at that age, you would need to complete year 12. So year 8, I think we went on a school excursion. I don't think it was year 7, but it might have been. But we went to the Great Aussie Bush Camp, and I remember doing archery and a ropes course or something. But I always remember the smell. When I smell the Nivea body lotion or hand lotion, it reminds me of that, because I'd taken that with me and it was like a really popular thing at the time. I remember the smell. So, I think it was year 8 or year 9. I was also part of a debating team, and I was doing some singing, so I'd do some performances as well. Still doing dancing, still doing swimming. But yeah, the debating team was another thing that I did with the older kids. So I was in year 8 or year 9, and I was with year 10 students. It was just something that I liked, and I could talk, and I guess argue or debate. A lot of the years I would do the end of year speech and stuff like that, except when I got a little outspoken, and for good reason. There were some things that my school was doing that they shouldn't have done, and I pointed that out, and I wasn't afraid of sticking up for what was right, you know. So, yeah. But, so that was year 8, and I think it may have been year 8 or year 9. We also went on a camp to Richmond, and we were camping in these wooden tents. So the structures that had a wooden floor, and we'd sleep in sleeping bags. It wasn't very comfortable, but it was still fun. And I remember we got lost and we ended up near an alpaca farm and had to all climb into a 4-wheel drive, and we went to go kayaking, so we eventually got there. So year 9, 1999. So year 9 I was 14, and I remember signing up for what's called the Duke of Edinburgh Award. You do some like bush hikes, things like that, generally outside of the school term, sometimes within or during the holidays or on weekends. So I did a few of those, and that was interesting, and they were like proper hikes, and you'd carry your tents and equipment and food and whatever. The first summit that we did was Bundina to Otford, and we'd hike, and we got to the campsite late and it was dark, and so it was wet and muddy, and we got to the campsite and put up our tents, and some of them ended up falling over because we couldn't see what we were doing, and a deer had come up and eaten someone's food because they'd left it out, and in the national park there were deer. So that was an interesting experience anyway. So we were still doing school sports, still doing swimming, stuff like that, still doing dancing. It was also the year where I had my first kiss, and the year where I had my first boyfriend. Different people. But at the end of year 9, turned 15, and then year 10. So year 10, actually before that, end of year 9, 1999, New Year's Eve, the Y2K bug. I remember being up on a hill, like a road, on the edge of the road that looked out over the area on New Year's Eve, and just waiting to see what happened, because for those of you that remember, there was all this speculation or worry that everything would just fail. The electricity would fail, cars would fail because of the computer chips, and computers weren't programmed the dates there was an issue with. So there was a concern that things would just stop working. So we didn't know what to expect. Needless to say, nothing really major happened. So that was New Year's Eve 2000. So 1999 to 2000. So 2000 came around. I was in year 10. That's the year there was Sydney Olympics. Started year 10. Did a few different types of classes. Ended up in year 10. That's when I started seeing my first serious boyfriend. So year 10 we also started practicing for Rockestedford, which is like a big performance for some of the schools that you'd enter, like a competition. I did some of the choreographing for that, and I was one of the main performers in that as well. I also got in to do the Sydney Olympic opening ceremony as a dancer, but late on they realised that some of us were still going to be 15 when the Olympics was on, so only by a month or so, but their liability didn't cover anybody less than 16, so I couldn't do it. That was a bummer. But the year before I'd done dancing for like the NRL grand final as part of the dance group, so that was something. So Sydney Olympics came around. What else? Year 10, we did our school certificate, so for some people they didn't come back in year 11 and 12, you didn't have to. Generally it's because you were studying elsewhere, or you had a job already, or like were studying a trade. But I went on to do my senior years, so year 11 and 12. So year 11 was 2001, and that's when we did the performance for Rockestedford. It was 2001, but we'd been practicing since 2000. 2001 you didn't have to do sports anymore if you didn't want to. Most of us didn't. So we got to go home early on a Tuesday. Beginning of year 11, you're too young to drive, you're 16 years old, so you can get your learners, but in Australia, or at least New South Wales, you can't get your P plates or provisional plates until you're 17, and you need to pass a test, and then you're on P plates for 3 years now. It used to be 1 year, but I just missed out and I had to do 3 years. So 2001, that was the year that I also went to Italy with school. There was a few of us that went. I think it was 2 weeks that we spent there, but we went to all different places. That was a really good experience as well. So that was the first senior year of high school, year 11. I remember movie marathons. So you would go to the cinemas late at night and they would have 2 or 3 movies back to back, and so you'd take a pillow or a sleeping bag, and that's essentially you'd spend all night in a cinema. We also used to go on school excursions to Australia's Wonderland, which doesn't exist anymore. It's now an industrial estate with warehouses and factories, but it was like a theme park. We'd go on the roller coaster, I think it was called the Demon, over and over and over again. So what else? You'd have your practice exams for the year after, which is your main exam in year 12. I remember obviously September of 2001. I remember September 11th. It was September 12th here. I'd woken up. My parents had told me what had happened, my mum, and it was just really confusing, I guess, at the time. And we were in the middle of exams at that stage as well. I remember going to school and people were talking about it and not completely really understanding what was going on, or what it all meant, or what was going to happen. 2001 was also the year I went to the Big Day Out for the first time, which was a big music festival here. That particular year there was a few bands. I think Rammstein was there. I was 16 and in the mosh pit for that, which was okay, that's fine. And there was a boiler room, what's called the boiler room, and what was the song? There was like Theophilus Thistler, whoever sung that, they were there. I think maybe Mudvayne may have been there in a different part. Limp Bizkit was also there. I went to the Limp Bizkit concert though. It was still one of the best concerts that I'd seen. Before that, I'd gone to a few other concerts. I went to a few Incubus concerts. I think after that I went to Evanescence. But I'd started listening to Evanescence I think the year before. And I think it was 2001 when they became more popular here. Like with, was it Daredevil when the song came out, was actually released? 2001. I think that song came out for the movie Daredevil. I could be wrong, but Linkin Park obviously was very popular. I still like their music, the earlier stuff though, more than their newer stuff. Well, it's older now still, but newer compared to that. What else? 2002 was my final year of high school. I'd had my license. Essentially, as soon as I could try to go for my license, I did. And so I could drive myself to school in year 12, which was good. Made it easy. So, yeah, year 12, 17, final year of high school, is turning 18 at the end. You generally have a formal or prom equivalent in year 10 and year 12. I remember year 12, it was like the coldest day on record in November for, I don't know, it was 12 years or something, 10 years. It was raining and miserable. It was just, it was a mess. But it is what it is. Yeah. I know I went to Fiji with my family as well, but I'm pretty sure that was in the 90s, so the mid to late 90s. We had some friends from New Guinea who lived in Fiji, so we met them and caught up with them over there. That was good. In between we did do some travelling, so Queensland. I went to Adelaide. I think we did Melbourne a couple of times, mainly in Australia. Cairns was another one. Mainly though when we were overseas we would be flying to Cairns for hospital and medical stuff. But it was the closest hospital that was reliable, I guess. What else? I'm just trying to think. I'm jumping across the timeline, but I think the next part of this series I'll make about post-high school, post-school, so 2003 onwards. It's just hard to believe that I finished school 19 years ago now. It really doesn't feel like next year, end of next year, it'll be 20 years. And that seems hard to believe. It's quite incredible, but it doesn't feel that long, but then in a way it kind of does as well. What else? So, yeah, end of year 12 I was turning 18. Yes, during high school I was working for a video store. That was my first job. I worked from the end of 1999, so pretty much as soon as I could get a job I did. Back then you could get a job at 14 and 10 months, so you bet that at 14 and 10 months I interviewed, and at 14 and 11 months I got my job. So I worked there up until the end of year 12. So from 99 to 2002 I worked in the video store. It was a great first job, and for some of you you'll have no idea what I'm talking about because they don't exist anymore in a lot of places. So just think like the main one that most people would recognise is Blockbuster, like a video store. I was in the video store pre-DVDs. When I was working for the video store they released DVDs. I remember when they came in, it was such a pain to go through the drawer to find the DVDs. They'd have locked cases but they'd come back damaged, and but yeah, it was a decent first job. I'm sure there's things that I miss out, but it's hard for me to remember a lot of things from when I was younger. If I see photos or talking to people and they remind me, then it kind of triggers that memory, but when I'm just talking at random it's harder to recall particular times. I don't know if it's because I moved around a lot or if it's just because it was such a long time ago. But yeah, I guess that's pretty much it for that period, and I hope you found it interesting, but I will end up making a part 3, I guess, for everything that happened after I left school and my adult life. Go through that with you. So, I don't know, that will include things about how I met my husband, buying a house, selling a house, buying another house, getting a job, like a proper career job, my experience with university, stuff like that. So if you're interested, just hang out for that one. Also, if you're interested in the Crackle Candle version of this, that's up as well, so keep your eyes out for that, or feel free to watch that if you want to. But I think that will do for now. I am probably going to stop filming this now, and I might actually go and have a bath. So I hope that you're all relaxed. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I did get some feedback to not speak as slowly in the last one as I did, and just speak softly and normally, so please do let me know if this was too fast. I do appreciate the feedback, because I try to make adjustments to get it right, and always try to improve, so fingers crossed everything sounds okay, so we'll see. But I hope you're all having a fantastic evening, afternoon, morning, or whatever it might be, wherever you are. I'm going to put out this candle, but then I'll see you in my next video as well.